My accountant called. Your factory and your trucks were sold. Your son was the one who ordered it. Robert Anderson trembled as he heard the words from his accountant over the yellow phone he clutched tightly. 50 years of hard work, building his furniture factory in Grand Rapids, had been erased in a single morning by a signature he never imagined would be used against him. The phone nearly slipped from his hands when Kevin, his trusted accountant of over 20 years, repeated the words that seemed impossible to believe. Michael, his only son, had used an old power of attorney to sell the entire company, including the 15 trucks in the delivery fleet, to a group of unknown investors. "But this can't be right, Kevin," Robert murmured, feeling his legs weaken. "Michael wouldn't do this to me. There must be some mistake." "Robert, I saw the documents myself. The sale was registered at 9 this morning. The money was deposited into Michael's personal account, not the company's." The news hit the businessman like a punch to the chest. At 75, he had dedicated every day of his adult life to building something he could leave to his son. Anderson Furniture was known throughout the region for its quality and fair treatment of employees. Robert hung up the phone and paced through the living room of his home, a simple house he had never wanted to change, even after the business thrived. The photos on the wall showed happy moments with Michael as a child, playing among the wood in the workshop that had grown into the factory. His wife, Margaret, appeared in the kitchen doorway, drying her hands on the flowered apron she'd worn for years. She immediately knew something was wrong by the way her husband stared at the floor. "What happened, Robert? You're pale." He couldn't find the words at first. How could he explain to the woman he'd loved for 52 years that their son had destroyed everything they'd built together? How could he tell her that the 200 families who depended on the factory might lose their jobs because of a family betrayal? "Margaret, I need to go to the factory now," he said, grabbing his car keys with shaking hands. "But you said you were resting today. You've been working too hard for your age." Robert looked at his wife, the strong woman who had stood by him through every hardship. She deserved the truth, but he needed to understand what had really happened first. The drive to the factory had never felt so long. Robert steered his old Camry through the familiar streets of Grand Rapids, passing neighborhoods where many of his employees lived. He thought of Mrs. Wilson, who had worked in production for 30 years, and Dave from maintenance, who had raised 4 children on the company's wages. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now back to the story. When he arrived at the factory, Robert was met with a sight he would never forget. The gates were chained shut with new padlocks. A notice taped to the main gate announced that the property had changed ownership and that new procedures would soon be implemented. A few employees stood outside in small groups, talking with worried expressions. When they saw Robert approaching, they all turned to him with anxious eyes, mixed with hope that he might have answers. "Mr. Anderson," called Rick, the production supervisor, "do you know what's going on? We came to work and found everything locked up. People are saying the factory was sold." Robert felt the weight of all their gazes on him. They were people who trusted him, who had dedicated years of their lives to help the company grow. Some had started working there as young men and now had gray hair. I'm still trying to understand the situation," he replied, struggling to keep his voice steady. "But I'll fix this. You have my word." Dorothy Miller, a 60-year-old woman who worked in furniture finishing, approached with tears in her eyes. "Mr. Anderson, you're like a father to all of us here. My grandson is in college thanks to the money I earn at this factory. If it closes—" "It won't close," Robert interrupted, surprising himself with the firmness in his voice. "I promise I'll fix this." He spent another hour talking to the employees, trying to calm them down and promising updates soon. Inside, he felt a mix of anger, sadness, and confusion like never before. How could Michael do this? Not just to him, but to all those families. The drive to Michael's house was silent, with Robert trying to gather his thoughts. His son lived in a gated community in the most upscale part of town, a choice that had always bothered the businessman who preferred simplicity. Michael's house was large and modern, with well-kept gardens and 2 imported cars in the garage. Robert rang the doorbell several times before the door opened, revealing Jennifer, his daughter-in-law, with a clearly uncomfortable expression. "Hi, Mr. Anderson," she said, avoiding direct eye contact. "Michael isn't home right now. Jennifer, I need to talk to him urgently. Do you know where he is?" The young woman hesitated, glancing over her shoulder as if checking if someone was listening. He left early and said he had some important business to take care of. But, Mr. Anderson, I wanted you to know that Grandpa." The voice of Timmy, Robert's 12-year-old grandson, interrupted the conversation. The boy ran down the stairs and threw himself into his grandfather's arms, who hugged him with the same affection as always, despite the situation. "Hey, champ, how's school?" "It's good, Grandpa, but Dad's acting weird today. He was on the phone all morning talking about business and seemed really nervous." Robert looked at Jennifer, who lowered her eyes. It was clear she knew something, but was torn between loyalty to her husband and respect for her father-in-law. "Jennifer, I know this is hard for you, but I need your help to understand what's going on. The factory workers are desperate." She took a deep breath and glanced at Timmy, who was playing with a toy car on the living room floor. "Timmy, go play in your room for a bit. Grandpa and I need to talk." When the boy left, Jennifer sat on the couch and gestured for Robert to do the same. "Mr. Anderson, Michael's been under a lot of stress these past few months. He's had some personal financial problems he didn't tell you about." "What kind of problems?" "He lost a lot of money on some risky investments. And then..." She hesitated. "Then he started online gambling to try to recover what he lost. But things just kept getting worse." Robert felt the world spinning around him. Michael had always been responsible, even if a little too ambitious. The idea that his son had gotten involved in gambling was completely unexpected. "How much does he owe, Jennifer?" "I don't know the exact amount, but it's a lot. He's gotten threats from people who lent him money to gamble. That's why he said he had to sell the factory, to protect us." "Protect us?" Robert stood up from the couch in disbelief. "He sold the livelihood of 200 families to cover his gambling debts?" Jennifer began to cry. "I tried to convince him to come to you to ask for help. But he said you would never forgive him, and that this was the only way out." Robert ran his hands through his graying hair, trying to process everything. 50 years of work had been thrown away because of his son's online gambling addiction. It was a reality he had never imagined. Jennifer's phone rang. She looked at the screen and turned even paler. "It's him," she said. "What do I say?" "Tell him I'm here and need to talk to him now." Jennifer answered the phone with trembling hands. "Michael, your father is here." "Yes, he already knows everything." "No, he's not furious. He just wants to talk." "Okay." She hung up and looked at Robert. "He's coming home now." The next 20 minutes were the longest of Robert's life. He paced around his son's living room, looking at family photos, expensive furniture, and decorative items Michael and Jennifer had collected over the years. All of it had been bought with money that came directly or indirectly from the factory he had built. When Michael finally arrived, Robert was shocked by his son's appearance. At 45, Michael looked like he had aged a decade in just a few months. His eyes were sunken, his beard unkempt, and he avoided looking directly at his father. "Dad, Michael, explain something to me," Robert interrupted, keeping his voice calm despite his anger. "How could you sell 50 years of my life without even telling me?" Michael slumped into an armchair, burying his face in his hands. "Dad, I had no choice. If I didn't pay the debts by today, they were going to do something to Jennifer and Timmy." "What debts, Michael? And who did you get involved with?" I started by betting small amounts online, just to make some extra money, you know. But when I lost, I bet more to try to win it back. And when that didn't work, I went to people who lend money fast." Robert knew stories about loan sharks and realized his son had gotten into a very dangerous situation. "How much do you owe?" $3.5 million. The number hit Robert like a punch. It was a lot of money, but not impossible to handle. The factory was worth much more, and he had other savings. "Michael, why didn't you come to me? Why didn't you ask for help?" "Because I was ashamed, Dad. Because you always taught me to be responsible, to handle money wisely, and I did the exact opposite. How could I look you in the eye and say I threw away everything you taught me? For the first time in decades, Robert saw his son cry. Not the calculated tears of a child trying to avoid punishment, but the desperate sobs of a grown man who had lost control of his life. Son, do you think our family has never faced problems before? Do you think I built that factory without going through hardships? Michael lifted his head and looked at his father with red eyes. But this is different, Dad. This is my fault. I chose to gamble. I chose to get involved with those people. And you chose to sell the factory without consulting me. You chose to decide the fate of 200 families without thinking of the consequences. Robert's tone hardened. He understood his son's desperation, but couldn't accept the choices he had made. Now tell me one thing. Who did you sell the factory to? Michael hesitated before answering. To the loan sharks themselves. They had a shell investment group set up exactly for situations like this. Robert felt another wave of anger. Not only had Michael sold the family business, but he had sold it to criminals who now had access to all the financial and operational details. And the employees, will they keep their jobs? They said they would evaluate each case individually. The vague answer confirmed Robert's worst fears. Those people were only interested in the company's assets, with no intention of keeping a labor-intensive operation like a furniture factory running. Just then, Timmy appeared in the room, carrying his school backpack. "Grandpa, are you picking me up from school today?" Robert looked at his grandson and felt his heart tighten. That innocent child was caught in the middle of a war he hadn't started and didn't understand. Michael, by getting involved with loan sharks, had put the whole family at risk. "Of course, champ. What time do you get out?" "At 5:30. Then I'll be there." After Timmy left for school, Robert turned back to Michael. "Son, answer me one thing. Is there still time to reverse this sale?" Michael seemed surprised by the question. "Reverse it? Dad, the money's already been used to pay off the debts. And even if it hadn't, how would we come up with $3.5 million to buy the company back? Leave that to me. I just need to know if it's still legally possible." Michael thought for a moment. The lawyer who handled the sale mentioned something about a 72-hour window to contest cases involving power of attorney. But Dad, even if it's possible, where are you going to get all that money? Robert didn't answer right away. Truthfully, he didn't know where the money would come from, but he knew he couldn't stand by and watch 200 families lose their livelihoods because of his son's mistakes. "Michael, I need you to give me all the details about this sale, names of everyone involved, documents, everything." "Dad, you don't understand. These people are dangerous. If I give you information about them, if you don't, 200 families will be out on the street, and that's a burden you'll carry for the rest of your life." Their conversation was interrupted by Michael's phone. He glanced at the screen and visibly tensed. It's one of them." "Answer it," Robert said. "Dad, I can't answer it. I want to hear." Reluctantly, Michael picked up, putting it on speaker. "Michael?" "Yes." "Just calling to make sure you understand the rules. The company is ours now, but you're still our problem if you do anything stupid." "Got it?" Robert gestured for his son to respond. "Got it. Good. And your father? Does he know everything yet?" Michael looked at Robert, who signaled for him to lie. "No, he doesn't know anything yet." "Good. The fewer people who know the details, the better for everyone." The call ended, and Robert grew thoughtful. "Son, do these people not realize I already know everything?" "No. They think you'll only find out when you get back from the weekend." Robert realized he had one small advantage, the element of surprise. If he acted fast, maybe he could do something before the loan sharks discovered he was aware of the situation. "Michael, I'm leaving now, but I need you to do something for me." "Anything, Dad." "I want you to write down everything that happened. Every detail about how you started gambling, how you met these people, how you ended up owing so much money. Everything." "Dad? Why?" "Because I'm going to find a way to fix this, and I need to understand exactly what happened." Robert left his son's house with more questions than answers, but with a determination he hadn't felt in years. 50 years of hard work wouldn't disappear without a fight. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. On his way home, Robert passed by the factory one more time. A few employees were still there, talking anxiously. He parked his car and got out to speak with them. "Mr. Anderson," called Rick, "did you find anything out?" "I'm working on it, Rick, but I want you all to know I'll do everything in my power to fix this situation." Dorothy Miller stepped closer. "We trust you, Mr. Anderson. We always have." The employee's words deeply moved Robert. These people had dedicated their lives to helping the company grow, and now they were counting on him to protect their jobs and their families. "Dorothy, how long have you worked here?" 28 years, Mr. Anderson. I started when my oldest daughter was little. Now she's a teacher. She graduated with the money I earned here." "And you, Rick?" 32 years. I started hauling lumber and now I'm a supervisor. You gave me opportunities I'd never have gotten anywhere else." Robert looked around and saw in their faces a mix of loyalty and worry that only strengthened his resolve to fight for the company. "Folks, I'll be honest with you. The situation is complicated, but it's not impossible to fix. I need a few days to sort things out, but I want you to know this factory is as much yours as it is mine." "You want us to keep coming to work?" asked Dave from maintenance. "Not for now, Dave. But stay ready. The moment I resolve this, you'll be the first to know." Robert spent a few more minutes talking with the employees, trying to project confidence despite the uncertainty gnawing at him. When he finally got home, Margaret was waiting in the kitchen with a fresh cup of coffee. "So, did you figure out what's going on?" Robert sat at the kitchen table where he'd had thousands of cups of coffee over the years, where he'd discussed life's struggles and joys with the woman he loved. It was time to tell the truth. "Margaret, sit with me. I need to tell you something serious." She sat and took his hands, hearing the gravity in his voice. "Michael sold the factory." Margaret blinked several times, as if she hadn't understood. "Sold it? To who?" "He used that old power of attorney we signed when we went to Europe last year. Sold everything without telling me." "But why would he do that?" Robert took a deep breath and told his wife the whole story. The online gambling, the debts to loan sharks, the threats the family had received. He watched Margaret's face go through the same emotions he'd felt: shock, disbelief, anger, and sadness. When he finished, Margaret was silent for several minutes. "Robert, where did we go wrong with Michael?" It was the same question that had echoed in Robert's mind all afternoon. "I don't know, Margaret. Maybe we gave him too much comfort. Maybe he never really learned the value of things. Or maybe we worked so hard to give him a good life that we forgot to teach him how to handle problems." She was right. Robert had been so focused on building a financial empire to leave his son that he'd neglected to pass on the most important values. "What are you going to do now?" she asked. "I'll try to reverse the sale. I have 72 hours to prove the power of attorney was used in bad faith." "And where will you get the money to buy the company back?" "I don't know yet, but I'll find a way." Margaret looked into her husband's eyes and saw the same determination she'd seen 40 years ago when he decided to start his own business, working alone in a rented garage. "I'm with you, Robert. Just like I was when we started with nothing." Their conversation was interrupted by the phone. It was Kevin, the accountant. "Robert, I've discovered some things you need to know urgently." "Go ahead, Kevin. I've been reviewing the sale documents more carefully. The power of attorney Michael used has some technical issues that could be challenged." "What kind of issues?" "First, it was made for specific use during your trip, not for selling company assets. Second, the declared sale value is way below the company's actual worth, which could indicate bad faith." Robert felt a small spark of hope. "What else?" "Also, I have some information about the buying company. They're a group with a history of suspicious purchases. If we can prove they knew about Michael's irregular situation, we could nullify the sale." "Kevin, can you gather all these documents?" "I'm already organizing everything, but Robert, you'll need a very good lawyer, and you'll need to act fast." Do you know someone? I do. William Peterson. He specializes in corporate law and has won similar cases. Can you set up a meeting for tomorrow morning? I'll call right now. When he hung up, Robert felt slightly more optimistic. There was still a chance, however small, to turn this situation around. Margaret, I'll need your help with something. Anything. I need you to call your sister in Chicago and ask if she can lend us some money temporarily. If we get the sale nullified, we'll need capital to buy back the company. Margaret nodded. Her sister Linda had married a successful businessman and had always offered to help in times of need. And Robert? Yes? Do you think Michael learned anything from all this? I hope so, Margaret, I hope so. That night, Robert barely slept. He kept thinking about the factory workers, the families who depended on those jobs, the future of the company that had been his life's work. He also thought about Michael, how a responsible young man had become someone capable of betraying his family's trust. The next morning, Robert was at the lawyer's office before business hours even started. William Peterson was a 50-year-old man known for his skill with complicated cases. Mr. Peterson, thank you so much for seeing me on such short notice. Don't mention it, Robert. Kevin told me about the situation. It's a delicate case, but not impossible. The lawyer spent the whole morning reviewing the documents Kevin had prepared. Around 11, he took a break and looked at Robert. Well, I have good news and bad news. Start with the bad. The bad news is the power of attorney technically allows the sale. It has a broad clause that could be interpreted as authorization for any transaction. Robert's stomach tightened. And the good news? The good news is the sale price is clearly below market value, and the buying company has a questionable track record. If we can prove there was coercion, or that the buyers knew about the irregular situation, we can void the deal. What do I need to do? First, I need your authorization to file legal action immediately. Second, I need you to get evidence that your son was being pressured by these people. What kind of evidence? Phone recordings, messages, witnesses, anything showing the sale wasn't made of his own free will. Robert immediately thought of Michael. Could he convince his son to testify against the loan sharks? Doctor, what if I get my son to confess everything, to say he was coerced? That would be perfect, but do you think he'd have the courage? I don't know, but I'll try. Robert left the lawyer's office with a mix of hope and apprehension. He had a plan, but everything depended on Michael's courage to face the consequences of his own actions. On the way to his son's house, he decided to make a stop at Margaret's place to seek moral support. When he arrived, he found his wife on the phone with her sister. Yes, Linda, I understand. Thank you, dear. She hung up and looked at Robert. So? Linda is lending us $1.5 million. It's what she can spare without touching her fixed investments. It was a good start, but they still needed much more to cover the full amount. Margaret, do you think Michael will have the courage to testify against the loan sharks? I think he'll do anything to try and fix what he did. The question is whether he'll have the courage to face the consequences. Robert drove to Michael's house, thinking about the conversation ahead. How could he convince his son to expose himself further to try and save the family business? When he arrived, he found Michael in the garage, organizing some boxes. He looked like he hadn't slept well and avoided making direct eye contact with his father. Hi, Dad. Hi, son. Can we talk? Michael stopped what he was doing and gestured for Robert to come inside. Michael, I found out there's still a chance to reverse the sale of the factory. His son's face lit up for a moment. Really? How? My lawyer found some irregularities in the process, but to get the sale annulled, I'll need your help. Anything, Dad. I'll do whatever it takes to fix this. I need you to testify that you were coerced into making the sale, that these people threatened you. Michael turned pale. Dad, if I do that, they'll what, Michael? Make you pay a debt you've already settled by selling the company? It's not just that. They made it clear I'd still be their problem if I caused any trouble. Robert sat beside his son on the couch. Son, you have two choices. Either you live in fear of these people for the rest of your life, or you face the situation now with the family's support. But what if they do something to Jennifer or Timmy? Michael, these people are criminals, but they're not stupid. They won't do anything that unnecessarily draws police attention. Michael ran his hands through his hair, clearly torn between fear and the desire to do the right thing. Dad, I don't know if I have the courage. Son, you had the courage to rack up millions in debt, the courage to sell the family business. Now you need the courage to fix what you did wrong. Just then, Timmy walked into the room carrying his school backpack. Grandpa, did you come to pick me up again? Hi, champ. Of course I did. The boy looked at his father and noticed he was upset. Daddy, are you okay? Michael glanced at his son and then at Robert. It was as if the child's innocence had awakened something in him. I'm fine, son. Just talking to Grandpa about some important things. Is it about the factory? My friend Timmy said his dad is worried because he might lose his job. Timmy's words hit Michael like a knife. The boy knew kids of company employees at school and was seeing firsthand how his decisions affected other families. Dad, Michael said, looking at Robert, I'll do whatever's necessary. Are you sure? I am. I can't let other families pay for my mistakes. Robert felt a mix of pride and relief. Finally, Michael was taking responsibility for the consequences of his actions. Then let's go to the lawyer's office now. The sooner we act, the better. The drive to the office was quiet, with Michael clearly nervous and Robert trying to think through every detail they'd need to cover in the testimony. At the office, Mr. Peterson greeted Michael professionally but got straight to the point. Michael, your father told me about your situation. I need you to tell me everything from the beginning without leaving out a single detail. For the next 2 hours, Michael recounted his entire story. He spoke about how he'd started by betting small amounts, how the losses had grown, how he'd met the loan sharks, and how the threats had become increasingly serious. They said if I didn't pay by yesterday, they'd do something to my family, Michael concluded. That's why I sold the factory. I had no choice. The lawyer took detailed notes. Michael, do you have any proof of these threats? Recordings, messages? I have some messages on my phone, and there's a call they made yesterday that my father heard. Perfect. I'll need copies of all of that. Dr. William explained that he would file the lawsuit that same afternoon, arguing that the sale was invalid due to coercion. But you need to know this will provoke a reaction from the buyers. They won't take it lying down. What kind of reaction? Robert asked. They'll probably try to intimidate you into dropping the case. It's crucial that you don't give in to pressure. Michael grew even more nervous. Doctor, what if they follow through on their threats? Michael, the moment we file this lawsuit, you'll be under legal protection. Any threats or violence will be a crime against the administration of justice. When they left the office, Robert felt more confident, but he knew the battle was just beginning. Michael, there's no turning back now. We have to see this through. I know, Dad, and I'll be with you. Back at home, Robert told Margaret about the day's developments. She listened carefully and then made an important observation. Robert, what if they try to intimidate the factory workers to pressure you? It was a possibility Robert hadn't considered. If the loan sharks found out about the lawsuit, they might try to use the workers as leverage. I need to warn the factory staff about the situation. Do you think that's a good idea? If they know you're fighting criminals, they might get scared. Margaret, these people have trusted me for decades. They deserve the truth. The next morning, Robert called a meeting with all the employees at a school near the factory. Over 150 people showed up, showing how worried they were about the future of their jobs. Everyone, you deserve to know exactly what's going on, Robert began. The factory was sold by my son to people who have no interest in keeping it running, but I'm fighting in court to reverse the sale. A murmur spread through the crowd. How is that possible, Mr. Anderson? Rick asked. My son was being threatened by people who loaned him money. He sold the company under duress, which could void the sale. Dorothy Miller raised her hand. Mr. Anderson, does that mean our jobs might come back? That's exactly what I'm trying to do, Dorothy, but you need to know it might be a complicated process. What can we do to help? Dave from maintenance asked. The question moved Robert. Even in such a difficult situation, the workers wanted to help. For now, I just need you to be patient and trust me. If anyone tries to intimidate you or your families, let me know immediately. A younger worker raised his hand. Mr. Anderson, what if we can't reverse the sale? What happens to us? It was the question everyone wanted to ask, but no one had dared. If we can't reverse it, I'll do everything in my power to help you find new jobs. I have contacts at other companies in the area. The promise wasn't much, but it was the most Robert could offer at that moment. After the meeting, Robert returned home with the feeling that an army of people was rooting for him. He was determined not to let them down. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. That same afternoon, Michael's phone rang. It was an unknown number. Michael? Yes. We heard you're trying to pull a fast one on us. Michael looked at Robert, who was beside him, and gestured for him to put the call on speaker. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't play dumb. We know your father filed a lawsuit to cancel the sale. Look, I held up my end of the deal. I sold the company and paid the debt. Michael, you didn't quite understand the rules. You're going to call your father right now and tell him to drop the lawsuit. If you don't do it by tomorrow, things will get ugly for your family. The call ended, and Michael turned pale with fear. Dad, they know everything. How did they find out so fast? I don't know, but Dad, what if they do something to Jennifer or Timmy? Robert thought quickly. If the loan sharks already knew about the lawsuit, it meant they had inside information. Michael, I'm calling William right now. When the lawyer answered, Robert told him about the call. That was expected, William said. But now we have more proof of coercion. Did you record the call? Yes, I did. Perfect. I'll use this in court. And don't worry about the threats. I'll request police protection for the family. Is that necessary? Better safe than sorry. These people are cornered and might do something reckless. After hanging up, Robert looked at Michael. Son, there's still time to back out if you want. No, Dad. We've come too far to quit now. Robert felt proud of his son's determination, but was worried about the family's safety. That night, a police car was parked in front of Michael's house and another in front of Robert's. It was surreal, but necessary. The next day, William called with news. Robert, I got an injunction suspending the sales effects until the case is settled. Does that mean I can reopen the factory? Exactly. The company is back under your control, temporarily. Robert couldn't contain his emotions. It was the first victory in what had seemed like an impossible battle. William, how long until the final ruling? About 2 months, tops. But Robert, you need to be prepared for the possibility of losing. Their defense is strong too. I understand, but at least we've bought some time. Robert rushed to the factory to share the good news with the employees. When he arrived, he found a crowd gathered at the gates, including some who hadn't attended the meeting the day before. Everyone, I have good news. They all turned to him expectantly. I got a court injunction. The factory is back under our control, for now. The group erupted in cheers and applause. Dorothy Miller began to cry with emotion. Does that mean we're going back to work? Asked Rick. Exactly. Tomorrow at 7 in the morning, everyone back on the job. The celebration lasted nearly an hour, with employees calling their families to share the good news. Robert felt as if he'd regained not just the company, but a part of himself. When he got home, Margaret was preparing a special dinner to celebrate. What's that wonderful smell? I made that lasagna you love. I thought it was a special occasion. Robert hugged his wife and kissed her cheek. Margaret, I don't know what I'd do without you. Nonsense. You've always been a fighter. Dinner was interrupted by a call from Michael. Dad, they called again. They said the game has changed now. What exactly did they say? That if I can't convince you to drop the lawsuit, they'll make my entire financial situation public. They'll spread the word that I'm addicted to gambling and that I'll bankrupt any company I touch. So what? The truth is already in the courts. Dad, if this gets out, no one will want to do business with me. I'll be marked forever. Robert Anderson realized the loan sharks had changed their strategy. Instead of physical threats, they were using psychological blackmail. Michael, would you rather be remembered as someone who made mistakes but had the courage to fix them, or as someone who destroyed a family business and didn't have the guts to fight for it. When you put it that way, that's how it is, son. Sometimes we have to face the consequences of our actions. In the following days, the factory resumed normal operations. The employees worked with even more dedication, aware they were fighting for their own survival. Robert split his time between managing the company and meetings with his lawyer, preparing their defense for the final trial. A week later, he received an unexpected visit. It was Linda, Margaret's sister, who had traveled from Chicago just to see him. Linda, what a surprise. Hi, Robert. I came in person because I have important news for you. They sat in the living room, and Linda got straight to the point. I talked to my husband about your situation. He has some connections in legal circles and found out the buyers of your factory are under investigation by the district attorney for other suspicious dealings. Really? Yes. If you can link your case to those other investigations, your chances of winning the lawsuit go up significantly. How do I do that? You need to talk to your lawyer. They might offer cooperation with the ongoing investigations. Robert immediately called Mr. Peterson, who was very interested in the information. Robert, this could completely turn the case around. I'll contact the district attorney first thing tomorrow. The next day, Michael got another threatening call. Michael, your little friends are poking their noses where they don't belong. I have no control over what my father does. Oh, you do. And you're going to use it or things will get very bad for you. What exactly do you want? We want your father to drop the lawsuit and accept the sale. In return, we'll forget you exist. And if he refuses, then you'll find out we have other ways of persuasion. When Michael told Robert about the call, he noticed the threats had shifted again. Dad, they're getting more aggressive. Or more desperate. Desperate people make mistakes. Aren't you scared? Of course I am, Michael. But I'm more worried about the 200 families who depend on this factory than the threats from a few criminals. 2 days later, Mr. Peterson called with surprising news. Robert, the district attorney has accepted our cooperation. They've even offered official protection for your family in exchange for information on these loan sharks' activities. Is that good? It's excellent. Your case is no longer just civil, it's part of a criminal investigation. Your odds of winning just skyrocketed. What's next? Michael will have to give a formal statement to the prosecutors. He'll need to tell them everything he knows about these loan sharks' operations. When Robert shared the news with Michael, he grew visibly nervous. Dad, if I do this, they'll know I'm the one who turned them in. Son, they already know you're cooperating with us. The difference is now you'll have official protection. But what about after, when this is all over? Michael, these people will likely be in jail when this is all over. The prospect of the loan sharks being arrested lifted Michael's spirits. It was his chance to finally be free of that nightmare. The testimony at the district attorney's office was scheduled for the following week. Robert accompanied his son, who was nervous but determined to cooperate. The prosecutor handling the case, Mr. James Thompson, was an experienced man who had investigated several criminal organizations. Michael, understand that your testimony could help dismantle a network that harms many people. You're not their only victims. How many people have they hurt? Michael asked. We know of at least 15 cases similar to yours. Business owners forced to sell their companies, properties, vehicles, always using the same scheme. The information made Michael feel less alone and more determined to help. During the 3-hour testimony, Michael shared everything he knew about the loan sharks. Names, methods of operation, threats, all of it was officially recorded. Michael, you were very brave, the prosecutor said at the end. Your testimony will help many people. When they left the district attorney's office, Robert looked at his son with pride. Michael, today you showed me the man I always believed you could be. Dad, I just want this to be over so we can start fresh. It will be, son, and we'll rebuild together. A week later, the news they'd all been waiting for arrived. Mr. William called that morning, elated. Robert, we won. The judge overturned the sale and even ordered the buyers to pay you damages. Really? Is it final? Absolutely final. The company is back under your control for good. Robert hung up the phone and hugged Margaret, who was beside him in the kitchen. We won, Margaret, we won. She burst into tears of joy. I always knew you'd do it. The first thing Robert did was call the factory and share the good news with the employees. Then he called Michael. Son, we won the case. Dad, does that mean... It means the factory is ours again, for good. Michael began to cry on the other end of the line. Dad, I don't know how to thank you. You already have, Michael. You had the courage to do what was right when it mattered. The next day, Robert called a company-wide meeting to celebrate the victory and discuss the future. Everyone, today is a very special day, he said to the gathered employees. Not only did we get our company back, but we learned the value of unity and loyalty. The applause was long and heartfelt. I also want to announce some changes that will make our company even stronger. Robert then announced that Michael would return to work at the company, but starting from the factory floor to relearn the business from the ground up. My son made serious mistakes, but he showed the courage to make things right. He'll start fresh with us, earning your trust through hard work. The decision was met with approval from the employees who respected Robert's integrity. Additionally, we're implementing a profit-sharing program for all employees. You fought for this company as much as I did. The news sparked another round of applause. Finally, I'm promoting Rick to General Production Manager and Dorothy Miller to Quality Control Supervisor. The promotions were a thrilling surprise for those chosen and a testament to Robert's appreciation for his employees' loyalty. In the following months, the factory thrived like never before. The story of Robert's fight to reclaim his business spread throughout the region, attracting new customers who admired his determination. Michael kept his word and worked tirelessly to earn back everyone's trust. He started by hauling lumber and operating machinery, learning hands-on what he'd forgotten after years of working only in offices. His gaming addiction was treated with professional therapy, and he became the spokesperson for a local campaign against compulsive online gaming. Timmy, who had witnessed the whole situation, learned valuable lessons about responsibility and courage that he'd carry for life. Margaret got involved in the company's social projects, creating a financial literacy program for employees and their families, so no one else would go through what Michael endured. The loan sharks were arrested 3 months later in an operation that dismantled the entire criminal network. 15 other families had their properties recovered thanks to Michael's testimony. A year later, Robert was in his office at the factory when Michael walked in for their daily chat about the day's work. Dad, the production team said we broke the monthly output record. That's great, son. Are you proud? I am, but even prouder to be earning it honestly. Robert looked out the window and saw the workers wrapping up another day. Many had been there for decades, now with the certainty their jobs were secure. Michael, did you learn anything from everything that happened? I learned that the choices we make affect far more people than we realize, and that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's doing the right thing despite it. And the most important lesson? That family is family, no matter what. You could have given up on me, but you chose to help me stand again. Robert stood and hugged his son. Michael, I'll always be here for you, but I hope I never have to fight again to save what we've built together. Never again, Dad, I promise. At dusk, Robert returned home, where Margaret waited with dinner ready. It was a simple scene, but it represented everything that truly mattered: family, honest work, and the peace of knowing they'd done right. Over dinner, they talked about plans for the company and their family. Michael had become a different man, more mature, more responsible. The crisis had hurt, but it had also strengthened their bonds. Robert, Margaret said, do you think all that struggle was worth it? Every second, Margaret. We didn't just save the company, we saved our family. That night, as he went to sleep, Robert felt the peace of a man who'd fulfilled his duty. He'd protected 200 families, reclaimed his business, and most importantly, helped his son become a better man. Anderson Furniture continued to thrive, becoming an example of how unity and determination can overcome any hardship. And Robert learned that sometimes you must nearly lose everything to discover what truly matters in life. The end. What did you think of this story of perseverance and family? Tell us in the comments where you're watching from and whether you believe Robert made the right decisions. Your opinion means a lot to us. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss other heartwarming stories like this one.